What do all 6 of these shoes have in common with me? They are all great for deadlifts and I am dead on the inside, so this is a match made in heaven. Three quick things before we dive into this video. Number one, I have reviewed every single one of these shoes individually, so please check out those reviews if you need more context on each of these models. These are all shoes that I continually go back to deadlift in. Number two, if you want to deadlift barefoot or in socks, go for it. You do not necessarily need shoes for deadlifts. However, a lot of gyms don't necessarily allow it, and a lot of folks like pulling with shoes on. All 6 of these shoes are more optimized for deadlifts, and that is why I have included them in this video, so you can buy these confidently knowing that they're gonna be great for deadlifts. And then number 3, I have timestamped everything down below, so please jump around this video accordingly, but all that to say, let's dive in. The first model I want to discuss is the Tolos Archetype 2.0. This has been one of my favorite shoes for deadlifting over the last few years, and why I like the Tolos Archetype 2.0 more specifically is it can work great for deadlifts, but this is also a barefoot shoe that you can wear out and about and do other types of training in. So if you do want a shoe that's really great for deadlifts, but you can also do a lot of other things in that has a casual look to it, this can be a great option to look into. Now, 3 things to like with the Tolos Archetype 2.0. Number 1, the appearance of the shoe has a nice business casual, more toned down, refined appearance. So if you want that shoe that can work great for deadlifts, but then you can wear out casually with friends or go out in, this can be a great option. You could also wear this to the office. So it's kind of that all-in-one style shoe. The second reason why I like this shoe, and more specifically for deadlifts, is it has a good upper security to it. So with the upper materials in the shoe and the booty style construction, it does a really good job at locking down your foot. You also have this somewhat rounded sole, so it feels really good on the foot regarding foot lockdown when you're either doing sumo and pressing into the lateral sidewalls of the shoe or pulling conventionally. The third reason why I like this shoe for deadlifts is the outsole does a pretty good job with grip. Whether you're training on rubber gym floors or wooden platforms, this model shouldn't have any glaring slip issues for you, and you can wear them for your other lifts as well. So for example, if you're a power lifter, the Archetype 2.0 should have good enough outsole grip for your squats and your bench press. Now, 2 cons that come along with the Archetype 2.0. Number 1, they can run pretty hot at times because we don't have the most ventilation through this upper construction. And then number 2, if you have a very thick foot, you might find them tough to get on at times, so keep that in mind if that is you. When it comes to sizing, true to size should be the call in the Archetype 2.0. Now, if you have 3E plus width feet, you might want to go up a half size, but generally speaking, true to size is a pretty safe bet in the Archetype 2.0. The next model I want to discuss is the Stoic Barefoot Trainer. So similar to the Tolos Archetype 2.0, this is kind of that model that you could do a little bit of everything in. However, there are a couple of differentiators between the Tolos Archetype 2.0 and this shoe. This shoe has a bit more of a sporty look with this outsole wrap here, and the boot does come up a little bit higher. Now, 3 things to like with the Stoic Barefoot Trainer. Number 1, the outsole grip. This outsole is phenomenal for traction. I really enjoy it, and with this lateral sidewall here, it gives you a nice base to really drive into if you like to tug sumo. I have yet to have any slip issues in this model on different surfaces with training. The second reason why I like this shoe is the higher boot construction. If you're somebody that doesn't want to go full high top, but you do like a little bit more structure or at least material to give you that proprioceptive feel of stability around your boot, this can be a good option. You do have a booty style construction here with this neoprene boot, so it is a bit easier to get on as well, and it comes up a bit higher. And then the third reason why I like this shoe is it has a nice wide toe box and it doesn't have a super aggressive taper here through the midfoot. So if you want a shoe with a nice width for your deadlifts that is super grippy, gives you a decent sidewall to drive into, this can be a great option to go with. Now, 2 cons that come along with the Stoic Barefoot Trainer. Number 1, the breathability of this shoe is also not the best. The upper is a little bit thicker, so you do have a bit of a thicker material here around the toe box, and this mesh here doesn't have the most ventilation. It doesn't do the worst job in the gym, but it's also not going to be the most breathable shoe on the market. The second con that comes along with this shoe is, look, if you like a lower boot, that is going to be a knock against this model. You might want to go with the Archetype 2.0, the Lenka Velocity later in this video, or the Vivobarefoot model, because this shoe is going to have a bit more of like an over-encumbering feel right under that malleolus. So again, while that can be a perk for some, it's going to be a knock for others. But overall, I don't think it's going to be a big issue because with this neoprene, it's not super rigid, so I don't think you're going to have a ton of rigidity. But if you are very particular on that ankle material, that would definitely be something to consider with this shoe. Now, when it comes to sizing of this model, true to size should be the safe call for most individuals. I think the width is plenty fine for most foot anatomies, and they tend to give you a little bit more length at the end of your toe box, so I don't think you have to size up if you have an exceptionally wide foot in this shoe. The next model I want to cover is the AVANCUS Apex Power High Top. Now, the V2 also works well. I included the high top in here because it adds a little bit more variety for this video, but do note the V2 also works well if you want a low top model from AVANCUS. Now, 3 things to like with this shoe. Number 1, the outsole grip. You cannot fault this shoe's grip. It is super grippy. You can wear it for any lift and it's going to give you a ton of lockdown, but more specifically for deadlifts, you're not going to have slip issues in this shoe when you're doing sumo deadlifts or conventional, and no matter the surface you're on, this would be a good option to go with. So for example, if you're a powerlifter and you plan to compete and you go to competitions where they have the carpet floors, this model should give you plenty of grip on that surface. The second reason why I like this shoe for deadlift specifically is it has a nice flat sole. So if you don't like the rounded soles, for example, used in the Stoic Barefoot trainer or the Tolos Archetype 2.0, this is going to be that shoe to give you that nice anchored platform-like feeling when you are tugging. And then you also have some lateral and medial sidewalls here to help wrap up the shoe and give you additional security at that. And you do have this synthetic layer around the toe box, and that gives you another layer of rigidity when you're driving laterally into the shoe when you're doing sumo tug. The third reason why I like this shoe is if you have a pretty thick foot or a high instep, or if you just like a bit more room with your shoes and you want something that's super wide and not super tapered through the midfoot, this can be a really good option to look into. Now, two cons that come along with this model. Number one, it's not going to give you the most versatility in the gym. There are other models in this video that will give you more range for cross training and other types of lifting. This is going to be a shoe that's really optimized for deadlifts, powerlifting, and more of your static strength work. The second con that comes along with this shoe is also its breathability. This model's upper can run pretty hot at times, and if you do go with the low top model, just keep in mind that the security can be a little interesting, and I've talked about that in prior reviews, so definitely check that out if you have a low volume foot. Now, when it comes to sizing in the AVANCUS Apex Power High Top and V2, true to size should be the call for most individuals. If you have a low volume foot and a very narrow foot, you might want to size down half size, but for everybody else, true to size should be a safe bet. The next shoe I want to discuss is the Lenka Velocity, and I'm going to say it, this shoe is, I think, slept on for both training and more specifically deadlifts. Now, why I like this shoe is it's one of those shoes similar to the Tolos Archetype 2.0 that you can wear casually and then also to train in, but it also has a super wide width to it. So this is definitely going to be one of the more wider fitting shoes in this video if you need maximal width through the forefoot and the midfoot. Now, why do I like this shoe for deadlifts? And three pros that come along with the shoe is number one, it has a very platform base here with its sole construction. Similar to the AVANCUS model, if you like a flatter sole, this would be a good option to go with. It doesn't have a ton of toe spring, it doesn't have that rounded sole. It gives you a nice anchored feeling when you're training, so whether you're doing conventional or sumo tugs, this model feels very locked down to the ground. The second reason why I like this shoe is the width. So once again, we do have an exceptional width here through the forefoot and the midfoot. We don't have an aggressive taper here, and we have a decent upper volume through the forefoot and midfoot as well. So if you have a very thick and caveman-like foot, you know who you are, this can be a decent option to look into. The third thing to like with this shoe is the appearance of this shoe. It's a model that you can go deadlift heavy weight in, but then also rock out and about, and it looks pretty good, and it has a good flexibility to it, so you get a lot of proprioception with this shoe as well. And again, this would be a really good option for folks who want a shoe for deadlifts, but then also doing a little bit of everything else in, and you have a very wide foot. Now, when it comes to sizing in the Lenka Velocity, I have an E to double E width foot and a normal arch, and I find that this shoe fits fine, but its width is actually a little bit too much for me. So that's why I think if you have a 3E, 4E width foot, this would be a good option to look into. And I think for most folks, you should be safe going true to size in this shoe. If you have a narrow foot, you might actually want to pass on this model and go with something else in this video because you might be swimming too much in the shoe. But for everybody else, true to size should be a safe bet in this model. The next shoe I want to discuss is the Notorious Lift Radix. Now, a lot of folks know Notorious Lift for their deadlift slippers, but they have since got into barefoot shoes, and I like this shoe because it's a nice extension of the brand and it gives you a bit more range compared to the deadlift slippers that they offer. So if you already like the deadlift slippers and you want to stay with the brand, they fit really well, the Radix can be a really good option to go with. And now, three things to like with this shoe. Number one, the grip of this model is pretty dang awesome. So the outsole grip of this shoe is not as aggressive as the Apex. So if you want something that's a little bit more toned down, but still gives you a ton of grip for sumo and conventional deads, this can be a really good option to go with. I have yet to have any slip issues with this shoe, and it does a really good job with this herringbone tread patterning here. The second thing to like with this model is it's super flexible. This has a very, very low stack height, and so if you want maximal ground feel, like this model has a ton of flex through the shoe, this can be a really good option to go with. You're gonna feel the ground really well in this model, and whether you're deadlifting or doing other types of training, walking, etc., this model definitely has one of the lower stack heights in the game if that's something you're after, and you can also take the insole out in the shoe and get even closer to the ground if you want. The third thing to like with this shoe, and I've kind of already talked about this, is it's a decent model for doing other types of training as well. So again, Notorious Lift, known for their deadlift slippers. This model gives you more range in the gym. It works really great for deadlifts, but it also works great for other types of training if that's what you're after, and if you like maximal ground feel, that's where the shoe is also going to excel for your training needs. Now, two cons I have with this shoe. Number one, there is no tongue gusset and the tongue can slide, which can be pretty dang annoying, and there's no loop on the tongue. So in future iterations, I hope there's a gusset or a tongue loop, because with more tongue lockdown, that won't irk people like me who can be a little bit OCD at times, especially when doing sumo tugs, when that tongue starts to go laterally. If you tighten this model enough, it does help, but it is something that I think could be an easy fix for future iterations. The second con that I have with this model is it can look a little bit chunky at times. It does give you more range in the gym, but I know some folks don't like the chunkier look of it, especially the toe box here. So definitely food for thought there. This might not be the best model to transcend out of the gym for daily wear purposes if you're not a fan of that appearance. Now, when it comes to sizing and fit in the Radix, if you have a narrow or medium width foot, you should be safe going true to size. If you have a foot width that is 2E or wider, you might want to go up a half size and just hedge your bets on length. This model can run a little bit shorter compared to other models. And so all that said, narrow and medium, go true to size. And if you have a 2E or wider foot width, go up a half size in the Radix. The next model I want to cover is the Vivobarefoot Motus Strength. So this is going to be a shoe that you will buy for cross training, CrossFit, and deadlift. So if you want that shoe for doing a little bit of everything in the gym, and you want a barefoot shoe that also works really great for deadlifts, this will be your model. I've honestly pulled a couple of PRs in this shoe, and I have loved it for most of my training needs. Now, 3 pros that come along with the Motus Strength is, number 1, the outsole has a nice aggressive lug patterning to it. Also, you have sidewalls on the medial and lateral sides. So outside of getting nice sidewalls to push into when doing sumo pulls and conventional deads, this is also a great shoe just for protecting your foot in general from things like rope climbs and CrossFit and whatnot, hence why this shoe can be great for deadlifts, but then also transcending into other gym needs. The second pro that comes along with this shoe is the upper construction. So if you like a more low profile fitting shoe that really hugs the feet well, feels very sock-like, this can be a good option. The upper in this shoe is a little bit more rigid. It feels a lot more low profile in the foot, and you have a booty style construction with a TPU and rubber wrap around here on the ankle and the heel, so you get a nice lockdown feel in the shoe. So you do feel very locked down and snug. It almost feels slipper-like too when you're doing sumo tugs, in my opinion, in this shoe, because that upper feels so low profile and has that rigid feel. The third thing to like with this shoe is you can take that insole out and get closer to the ground. So you do get a little bit more cushion in there if you want to leave that in for plyos and whatnot, but then if you want to take that out for deads, you can get really close to the ground in this shoe, and I don't think you're going to lose any ground feel, even though the lugs are a little bit more aggressive in this model compared to models like the Primus Lite 3, Primus Lite Knit, etc. Now, a couple of cons that come along with this shoe. Number 1, if you have a thicker foot or an exceptionally wide foot, this may not be the best option for you. This shoe is going to probably feel a little bit limiting for your foot anatomy, and with that more rigid upper and the sidewalls, it can feel a little bit tight for certain feet. And then the second con that comes along with this shoe is the breathability. This is not going to be the most breathable shoe in the gym. This rubber and synthetic and TPU overlay does not breathe well, and if you are training in super hot gyms, that can be an issue. Now, I will wear these with and without socks, and I'll rotate through to prevent any stink, because without breathability, you obviously don't want to go fully sockless all the time in the shoe, because that can lead to some issues with odors. So I will rotate, but it is definitely one of those models that you'll want to do that with, because I think you will have a more comfortable fit without socks, but because of the lack of breathability, you might want to get some thin no-shows to go with this shoe. When it comes to sizing, true to size should be the call for most individuals. Now, this model does run a little bit long, like the Primus models from Vivobarefoot, and so if you are in between sizes and you have an exceptionally wider foot, I would say size up. And if you're in between sizes and you have a narrow foot and you typically have room at the end of your toe box, I would say size down in the shoe. And then for everybody else, true to size should be the right call in the Motus Strength. All right, guys, that wraps up this best deadlift shoe guide for 2024 and 2025. These are 6 awesome options. There are a lot of shoes on the market that can work for deadlifts. These are just 6 that I like to come back to for different reasons. If you have additional questions on any of these shoes, or if you want to shop these shoes, visit the description down below. I also have some of these shoes on the That Fit Friends shop, which is building and we're getting more shoes on it. But all I have to say, y'all, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.